What would happen if NATO and Russia clashed in a full-blown conflict? It's a question that sends shivers down the spine of even the most seasoned military strategists. We're talking about a scenario that would have far-reaching implications, not just for the parties involved, but for the entire world. A conflict of this magnitude could reshape geopolitical landscapes, alter alliances, and irreversibly affect the lives of millions. Now hold that thought. Imagine, for a moment, that this isn't mere speculation. Let's take a journey along a potential timeline of conflict. The year is 2025 and tensions between NATO and Russia reach a boiling point. In this hypothetical future, the geopolitical chessboard is set with the pieces of power carefully positioned. The stakes are high and the world watches with bated breath as two of the most formidable forces on the globe lock horns in a contest of wills and ideologies. The friction between Russia and NATO isn't new, but the heat has been steadily rising. The reconstitution of Russian military power post their invasion of Ukraine has raised alarms within NATO. The alliance is faced with a resurgent Russia, its military muscle flexing with renewed vigor. The implications for European security are profound and unsettling. It's a wake-up call for NATO, a nudge to rearm and prepare for a potential threat looming on the horizon. But what ignites the spark in this powder keg scenario? The answer lies in the heart of Ukraine, a nation caught between the East and the West. The issue at the core is the long-range Western missiles, a contentious point of discord that has been simmering for a while. Russia, under President Putin's leadership, issues a stern warning to NATO. The lifting of restrictions on Ukraine's use of these missiles would be seen as nothing short of an act of war. It's a threat laced with the icy certainty of retaliation, a line drawn in the sand that NATO is being dared to cross. The US, along with its NATO allies, is caught in a quandary. They have provided Ukraine with limited cross-border strike capabilities, but have so far stopped short of approving the use of longer-range systems. The pressure to do so is mounting, with voices both within Ukraine and the alliance calling for a stronger stance against Russia. The situation is fraught with danger. Accusations of aggression fly from both sides, further escalating the tensions. The rhetoric around nuclear weapons is increasing, adding a chilling edge to an already volatile situation. And so the spark ignites, and the world braces for the impending storm. As the war drums beat louder, the world watches in stunned silence. The opening salvo of the conflict is a thing of brute force and stark terror. NATO, employing a strategy of swift and decisive action, launches a coordinated attack on key Russian military installations, the alliance's primary objective to degrade Russia's ability to wage war and to defend its borders. Russia, on the other hand, is not caught unawares. Anticipating NATO's move, they employ a strategy of attrition designed to wear down the alliance's resources and resolve. The Russian bear, wounded but far from defeated, retaliates with a ferocity that sends shockwaves across the globe. In this high-stakes game of chess, other nations find themselves drawn into the fray, willingly or otherwise. China, for instance, is faced with a decision that could redefine its role on the global stage. With a long-standing non-interference policy, it's a choice between maintaining strategic neutrality or siding with Russia, their ally. Meanwhile, nations in the Middle East find themselves caught in the crossfire. Their geopolitical location makes them prime targets for both NATO and Russia, as each side seeks to secure their supply lines and establish strategic footholds. The region becomes a hotbed of activity, further complicating an already volatile situation. The conflict sends ripples through the global political landscape. Old alliances are tested, new ones are forged, and the world order as we know it is thrown into disarray. Nations on the fringe, previously overlooked, suddenly find themselves in the spotlight, their actions carrying far-reaching implications. The world economy, already on shaky ground, teeters on the brink of collapse. Markets are in freefall, and currencies fluctuate wildly as nations scramble to secure their assets. The global community, already reeling from the shock of war, now faces the prospect of a financial meltdown. The world is in chaos, but the end is nowhere in sight. The conflict, far from reaching a resolution, seems to be spiraling out of control. As the world watches with bated breath, one question remains: how will this all end, and at what cost? The year is now 2026 and the tide of the war begins to shift. The balance of power, which had been teetering precariously, starts to lean decidedly in one direction. The war, a complex chess game of military strategy and international politics witnesses critical turning points. One of these pivotal moments is marked by a change in strategy. The NATO forces, initially focused on defensive operations, adopt a more aggressive approach. This shift is a response to Russia's relentless military rebuilding efforts. The change in strategy is also informed by the realization that a defensive posture alone will not be enough to deter Russia's expanding military might. Simultaneously, the war sees several significant battles that alter its trajectory. These battles are not just about the physical conquest of land or the destruction of military assets. They are about winning hearts and minds, about demonstrating resilience, and about the assertion of power and influence. While the battles rage on, behind the scenes, diplomacy and international pressure play their part. The United Nations, along with other international organizations, step up their efforts to broker a peaceful resolution. Sanctions are imposed, diplomatic ties are severed, and international pressure mounts. This is not just a war between NATO and Russia, it's a global issue that demands a collective response. The war also tests the alliances that bind NATO. Member states grapple with the implications of the conflict on their own national security, economic stability, and political alliances. The war prompts a re-evaluation of commitments, forcing NATO members to reaffirm their solidarity and shared strategic goals. Moreover, the role of non-state actors becomes increasingly important. With the advent of cyber warfare, traditional battle lines blur. The war is not just fought on the ground, in the air, or at sea, but also in the digital realm, where state-sponsored hackers and cyber militias exploit vulnerabilities to disrupt and destabilize. As the dust settles, we begin to see a glimmer of an end to this conflict. The road to peace is fraught with challenges and uncertainties, but the turning of the tide brings a renewed sense of hope. The war may not be over yet, but the end is starting to come into view. The conflict finally draws to a close, leaving the world forever changed. In the aftermath of this colossal clash, the geopolitical landscape bears the scars of battle. The tremors of this conflict have been felt far beyond the borders of NATO and Russia, echoing throughout the corridors of global power. The political implications are profound. NATO, originally formed as a defensive alliance, has been thrust into an offensive posture. Its members, once united by a common threat, now grapple with the consequences of their collective actions. Russia, on the other hand, emerges with its military might both tested and exposed. Its geopolitical standing, already under strain, is further complicated by the international response to its actions. Economically, the world is left to pick up the pieces. The war has disrupted trade routes, rattled markets, and instigated a global recession. The economies of NATO members, already stretched thin by the war effort, face the daunting task of rebuilding. Russia, heavily reliant on energy exports, grapples with economic sanctions and a destabilized energy market. The war has served as a harsh reminder of the interconnectedness of the global economy and the ripple effects of conflict. Socially, the war has left a deep and lasting impact. In NATO countries, public opinion is divided. There's a sense of relief that the conflict is over, yet a collective grief for the human cost of war. In Russia, the war has stirred a potent mix of nationalism and resentment. Across the globe, societies grapple with the human toll of the conflict and the displacement of countless people. The world now faces a new set of challenges. How do we rebuild in the wake of such devastation? How do we mend the fractures in our global community? The answers to these questions will shape the course of our future. And so we find ourselves in a new world order forever marked by this conflict. So what have we learned from this hypothetical journey? We've examined the potential sparks that could ignite a NATO-Russia conflict, from the lifting of restrictions on Ukraine's use of long-range Western missiles to the reconstitution of Russian military power. We've delved into the heat of the hypothetical conflict, imagining the tactics and strategies that could unfold on the battlefield. We've pondered how the tide might turn in such a conflict, considering the role of alliances, technology, and the unpredictable nature of warfare. We've also explored the potential aftermath of such a conflict, from the human cost to the geopolitical repercussions. The reconstitution of Russian military power post the invasion of Ukraine, as highlighted by the Atlantic Council, underscores the evolving dynamics between NATO and Russia and the implications for European security. The potential for Ukraine to use more advanced, long-range Western missiles as warned by Putin and reported by CNN, adds another layer of complexity to this already tense situation. Yet, as we reflect on these possibilities, it's crucial to remember that these are hypothetical scenarios. The reality is far more nuanced, and the outcomes are far from certain. The chessboard of international politics is ever-changing, with each move potentially altering the course of history. In the end, the lasting impact of a potential NATO-Russia conflict would reach far beyond the two entities, affecting global politics and reshaping the world as we know it. The fallout would be felt in every corner of the globe, underscoring the interconnectedness of our world. As we ponder these possibilities, we are reminded of the importance of diplomacy and peaceful resolution in maintaining global stability.